Well, 2021 certainly off to an interesting start, isn't it? Going to try and lay down some thoughts while smashing up some demons yet again. 2 hobbies at the same time. Why not? I mean, everybody knows. There's nothing I can say that you probably won't already know. Trump is going, staring down the barrel of a second impeachment. Pelosi's going hard on that. They really want to salt the earth after him, don't they? All the conservative, right-wing, even centrist voices were all shifting over to Gab, and I think I heard even just today that Telegram isn't safe. Apparently it's unencrypted and they're coming for that as well. So the overview is that if you are not an extreme leftist, if you're not a progressive down with their view of the world and their agenda, then you're on the run. We don't have institutional power. The guy that we elected, I saw a Project Veritas thing just even on Sargon's channel where they were admitting to having, I think Texas has arrested a ballot harvester lady. She stood to make about $100,000 by harvesting, thousands of ballots on behalf of Joe Biden. So there is ample evidence of voter fraud. It's just absolutely everywhere. Yet we're all on the run, for the moment in social media, but God, give it some time and we'll see what happens. We're looking for a place to even discuss things without being censored. So we all know all about that stuff. That's not going to be a surprise to you at all. But also reports from the ground in normie land, I sometimes like to run experiments on normies. I don't expect too much, but I do like to run the odd experiment where I just throw some things at them, a pretty clear, shall we even say, double standard scenario, just to see how the brain ticks over for them. And I did this recently, and I think, what was the conversation? Oh yeah, someone had thrown out the phrase white supremacy, so I came back at them with a DM later on. Sorry, I'm just drinking my coffee as well. And I said, I sent them that infographic from the Smithsonian. I said, a lot of the time when people say white supremacy, what they actually mean is things like having a job and showing up on time and the scientific method and being punctual. And this is what they're saying in their own words. So be careful what you wish for when you say, be careful what you're talking about, that you know what you're talking about when you're talking about, white supremacists, because it often really just comes down to, please stop doing things that create first world societies, because we can't or don't want to compete with that. And if you do productive things and have social commons that lead to positive outcomes, well, you're being a supremacist. So please stop it. Oh yeah, and give us money. That's what it amounts to. I think I even went a little bit hard and I showed him that video from Noel Ignatieff, the Jewish Harvard professor who talked about eradicating whiteness all those years ago. I think he's dead now actually, but geez, that was a while ago. It's when people started getting an inkling for something being not quite right. But look, the reaction is, as you would expect in NPC world, but it's ignored. Oh no, I'll look at that, sure, yeah, no worries, and then you don't hear anything about it again. And look, really what's going on is, I can't know for certain, but I can make an informed guess. I think what's going on for a lot of normies, and especially a lot of women, because they're very socially conformist, is the idea that the power structure that they live in doesn't have their best interests at heart scares the shit out of them. And so I don't have this ability, but some humans certainly have the ability to just ignore things they don't like and close their eyes and wish that it would go away, or that I think there's actually an implication that somebody else is going to take care of it. Once again, I'm always picking on women, but only because there's things I wish people had explained to me, but I think, as Kurt Doolittle's pointed out, often women will ignore or go about their business with the implicit assumption that someone else is going to take care of it, that they don't have to act. And it's usually, I think, an implicit assumption that the men will take care of it, which makes it very hard, because when you do try to take care of it, if you propose or talk about things that are contrary to the societal mainstream narrative, they're very often the first ones to sort of shout you down and or just ignore you because they can't handle it. So yeah, that's what happened to me in normie land. It's just ignored. And that's because we are not the power structure. We are the underdog now. The left were actually completely successful when they said they wanted to do a long march through the institutions. I try to be open-minded and say, in terms of election fraud, I'm not going to say, look, my personal feeling is absolutely 100% there was election fraud. But, there may not have been. People like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, maybe they were prone to being quite fanciful and imagining things that weren't there and claiming evidence that they didn't have. But all I will say is that my personal feeling is, absolutely, they fucking stole it. Of course they did. But, I don't know that. I can't know that for sure. But what I can know is that if what Rudy Giuliani is saying is true, when he lays out the evidence that he has, then I would say that it seems very likely. If he's telling the truth, then I would definitely say there's enough evidence there to assume that, yeah, they stole the election. So there's that. But also because we don't have institutional support, we're not in the academy, we're not in the news. I'm just talking, by we, I just mean even just random, like, normal conservatives. But, especially with alt-right or God forbid anyone be, a pro-Western civilization advocate as well, but we just don't have the institutions. And so all the normies are going to, just shout you down and assume that you're just a kook with saying something wrong, because if you were right, then the institutions and society in general would reflect that, and they would be echoing what you're saying, but you're not. And so people just follow the herd, and that's what they're going to keep doing. So we are powerless. We've started 2021. I've got to stop saying that. More powerless than we ever thought we would be. Donald Trump got royally screwed over. We're all getting censored. It's it's a bit of a shit fight. It's terrible, actually. No one can say that it's good. It's not good. We're pretty much up shit creek, and it's highly likely that we could be preparing for a scenario where people just have to live through pain, and often human beings do. They won't listen to people when they should, and so they just have to learn through painful experiences. But the thing that really sucks about that, it's kind of like when people say, oh, you get the government you deserve. And it's like, that is true of a lot of people. If you're a normie and you don't want to think for yourself and you're scared at the implication, and when someone tries to prompt you to think for yourself and you run away or you ignore them or you gaslight them or you pretend like it doesn't exist, well then yeah, you do get the government you deserve. But the problem I have with that is that I don't get the government that I deserve. I don't deserve any of this shit. I am self-sufficient. I value the truth. I'm happy to speak up. I'm not a coward. So that's a shame, but things just don't seem to work out like that for everybody. So this is the situation we're in. We are powerless, and that's how things are just starting up for us, I admit that, when they were talking about election fraud, I actually did believe that there was a slim chance. I always said I wouldn't be surprised if Biden won. absolutely, because, you know, I'm a little bit black-pilled like that. But I also thought, well, you know, there's so much clear evidence. It also wouldn't surprise me if Trump got back in, and I was pretty much looking forward to the massive shit fight, the absolute shit storm there would have been if they could prove fraud, and, you know. But then again, isn't that just the fantasy from 2016? Well, lock her up, you'd be in jail, and it all just turned out to be bullshit, because even Trump doesn't want to turn on the elites, because he is one of the elites, you know. And it's a big, powerful glimpse into a reality of the world that, you know, power is what the aim of the game is. And the elites, even if they pretend to be on opposite aisles, opposite sides of the spectrum, they've got more in common with each other than they do with the plebs, unfortunately. And so, you know, it's going to be very hard to get them to police each other. And so, you know, even with Trump, like how easy would it have been to investigate Hillary? But she's elite, he's elite, so they look after their own. They close ranks around their status. And that's really unfortunate, but it seems to be the case. So we don't have social media, we don't have the academy. You know, we don't have big business, we're very quickly losing middle class business. You know, the underclass is still a bit of a mix. There are a lot of dependents who are going to be pro-establishment, but there are also a lot of, you know, MAGA people who have much, you know, who are pretty good and have a bit of a clue about things. But yeah, look, it's really tough. It is really tough. Sorry, I'm just concentrating once again on smashing demons, on doom, because it seems to be an interesting little combo to talk about politics and kill demons. You know, maybe I'll sign up for James Fox Higgins' show, Champions of Light, yet, if I like killing demons so much. But yeah, so we're pretty screwed. We're pretty screwed. That's just how it seems to be at the moment. So what can we do? I mean, more and more I'm becoming interested in conversations about what we can actually do, because theory is great, politics is great, but at the end of the day, we need to be able to do something, to have control over our own lives, and to be working towards changing this around in the future. One aspect of it is quite exciting, because, you know, the left were the underdogs since about the 60s. So what are we, 2022? So yeah, 60 years. And that's, you know, is that two generations? I think so. But they were the underdogs, and they developed a lot of successful strategies on how to gain power from a position of powerlessness. And of course, you can read your rules for radicals, all those sort of things. But yeah, they became masters of gaining power from a powerless position. And now they do have power. And, you know, we're dealing with that now. So really, what we need to do is start developing some of the same techniques on gaining power from a position of powerlessness. And I would say one of the very first things you can do is keep an eye out for anyone who shares your values, because that's really what it comes down to. And you have to be very careful about this, because if you speak to the wrong people, you can get fucked up pretty royally. You know, they will dob you in, they will come after your work, they'll do all sorts of horrendous things to you. And so what you have to do, you know, some people really put themselves out there still, and that's cool. I'm going to work on this myself in the future as well, and just trying to making personal connections with people who I agree with, because one of the things that will always ring true is that there is power in numbers. The left understands that, and that's part of their strategies of gaining power from powerlessness. There is power in numbers, and so whether it's online or offline, I mean kind of in real life, you know, I think there will be a time when you will be happy that you knew people in real life who shared your values, if you know what I mean. It could mean all sorts of things. The next concept I want to talk about, James Santagata is always saying. He's a bit of a character. You can look for him on the socials. But the idea that business is the battlefield, this is something that the left understood as well, is that money is also power. And when you have money and you run businesses, you have the power then to censor and subsidize people as you see fit. So if you run a business, you can not subsidize leftists, because that's exactly what they're doing to us. You know, that's happened to me in real life as well, is that people are quite happy to, even if you're really good at your job, it's not about money. You know, that's another failure of libertarianism, is that people have things they value more than money. And it might even just be that they intuit that if their worldview succeeds, they'll have more money and resources in the long term rather than the short term. There's that too. But the left are quite happy to not hire people, even if they are really good at their job, based on shared values and things like that. They're more than happy to do that. And so I suggest doing that as well. I've said this before, if you don't run a business and you don't really make much money, well, I think you fall into the category of you should probably sort your own life out first before you're talking about politics. Because you know, you have to, if you're going to provide opinions on things, you have to be able to demonstrate merit, because everyone's got opinions, but they're not all equally valid. So are you making money? Are you running a business? That is port of call number one. You need to make money. If you can't make money, if you're not in a position of power, even if you're, you know, even if it's just like I'm a manager somewhere, or like a small manager, if you don't have any power, well, you should try and get some. And if you can't get some, if that's beyond your ability, well, you should probably stop talking about politics, because you need to be able to demonstrate sufficient merit before anyone's going to take you seriously. So that's point number one. Then when you do have some power, whether that's, you know, in an organization that's not yours or in your own business, you know, you can then use that to subsidize the right people and tax the wrong people. Pretty easy concept, really. You know, give contracts, give work, give extra resources in any fashion whatsoever to people who share your views. And of course, you have to tease that out very gently, you know, whether someone shares your views or not. So just chill out about that for a start. But yeah, ultimately that's what you have to do. I am saying now, I think that institutional power is going to be a very big player in whatever happens. Any way that we turn this situation around, institutional power is going to have a lot to do with it. So you know, I don't believe anymore, as the libertarians would say, that, you know, go your own way, build your own universities and things like that. It's like, no, a society that can survive needs commons. It really does need commons. And so we need to capture those commons back in some way or another. I personally couldn't go into academia because I couldn't stand the people, because, as Brendan Hayes recently put it very aptly, the academy has become a refuge from the meritocracy, and I can't stomach that. I can't stomach the people. But if you can, then great. you know, because ultimately we do need to recapture the academy, and we need institutional power. That's what I'm saying. That's a big part of it. Another area of power that we need to regain is in relationships between men and women, because women will follow the lead of a strong, dominant man. They will. And you know, if you haven't seen that for yourself, if you haven't experienced that, trust me, if you up your game enough, they will follow. And depending on the woman, if she is already even a little independently minded, she'll follow you even in the face of being at odds with the greater society. So the way you get a woman to follow you is you provide value. You basically just provide her the things that women want, and that is security. Often, not all the time, but you know, often for women they want security, especially if they get, you know, close and over 30. And money. Women want resources for the purpose of having a family. So despite what 60 years of feminism will tell you, women value money a lot. They really, really do. It's a big thing. And they also want you to be, you know, it shows signals of genetic superiority. So, you know, being smart's all good, but I think being smart on its own, smart can go both ways. Because as an abstract idea, I don't think it's very useful to a lot of women. And a lot of smart guys indulge abstract ideas so much that they kind of become useless. They don't really use their intelligence for anything useful. And that's a net negative, absolutely. So it's more signals of intelligence that are very attractive to women. Social awareness is attractive. Resources, achievements, status. If you're using your intelligence to do things like be good at what you do, be really good in your field, then they love it. It's great. It's really great. But that is another area of power that we can take back, is the ability to lead a woman. And you know, like I said, some women are more receptive than others, but universally, if they don't have any security, they run with the herd like chronic. I just see it all the time now. I can't really unsee it, to be honest. And so provide a woman with what she wants and be strong. Have the ability to intelligently disagree with people sometimes, or to show that you're your own man. And come through with the goods. If you say, trust me, well, you better come through with the goods. You know, you better get her what she wants, the safety and security, but you being a success, whatever. Some women want different things, but a lot of them want to nest and have families. So you better be able to provide that. And also set boundaries. If a woman, you know, the ability to lead them depends a lot on you having enough self-esteem to be able to say, well, not everything goes in a relationship, and for her to, it's a balancing act, her to feel safe with you, but also know that if she were to severely mistreat you, then you wouldn't just cop anything. You wouldn't stay around, because that would mean you're a weak man, and a weak man's useless. So show strength, set boundaries, lovingly, benevolently lead, and you know, that goes a long way. And once you can do that, you know, have some kids, stay married, and assert some dominance and some control over the political, spiritual value set of your family. You know, have some opinions about your kids' children, about even who your wife's friends are. Because there are so many degenerate influences ready to lead women and kids astray. It's really horrible these days. You have to be in a position where you can kind of give your 2 cents, well, hopefully it's more than 2 cents is the whole point. You can lead that situation. And if you can lead a woman and you can have some kids and you can lead your family, well, you're doing a lot to regain power over the institution of marriage. And I think that's a big one, really big one. So business is the battlefield. Marriage is the battlefield. There are a lot of battlefields, absolutely. You have to look after yourself, because on the level of signaling, if you want to signal to normies, you have to be, well, you know, people are hierarchical. They have to be able to look up to you, and a lot of people look up to people who, you don't have to be genetically the most perfect, but you have to show some discipline, and that, you know, you work out and things like that. Have a great physique if you can. Take care of yourself. Dress well. Don't signal that you're an outcast, because a lot of people operate on the level of social signaling. They feel things through signaling and their emotions rather than understand them logically. And an example of this is that, you know, let's take an instance of guys and girls, and, you know, I'm sure if you're a young man, you've been in that situation, you know, in your early 20s, where you get some guy and he's just an absolute douchebag, and he cleans up with the chicks. Like, he gets a lot of attention from women and they really like him, and he's a loser, but he's got a big personality. And someone might say to you, oh, women like confidence. I'm like, okay, well, who's really more confident? This guy, or, you know, the guy with the job? You know? How does that work? Well, the way that works is that women, a lot of people, young people especially, but also women, very heavily rely on social signals to understand what's going on. And what that means is that somebody that signals, signal is like the outside wrapping that's communicating, the wrapping on the present. It's not the box, it's not what's in the box, it's the book. It's judging a book by its cover. It's the cover of the book, not the contents of the book. But a lot of people do judge a book by its cover, because that's the level that they are able to understand things at. Especially when they're younger. You know, people tend to wise up when they get older, and that's cool. But a lot of young people, young women, they kind of go with the herd, because that's kind of how they understand things. And so have a good cover. What I'm saying is, have a good cover. If people judge books by their covers, then have a great cover. It's really important. It's never going away. It's always going to be important, you know, in terms of getting through to people and having an influence, because we'll reach a tipping point, and we're at that tipping point now. The left is at that tipping point where you can have institutional power and things like that, but at a certain point, people will just follow you, because you're the dominant, they see you as the dominant influence, because a lot of people just follow the dominant influence of society, and that's kind of how they go. It's nothing, well, I'm not going to say there's nothing wrong with it. I wish that people did, you know, were more independently minded, but they're not. So having a good cover is gaining social power. So we've got institutional power, we've got power in relationships, and social power is also very important. I'm trying to think of any other ones. But look, you should be able to see the game by now. The game the left has played is gain power and enforce what you value. And we have to do that as well. And, you know, there might be a time too where people do wake up just because of the pain that they're in, because they've suffered so many negative consequences because of how things are going. People will start to come around as well, and you can be in a position, I've experienced that myself this year, you can be in a position where once people start to ask a question or two, they kind of remember you as like, oh yeah, you're that guy, you were talking about that. And if you haven't really turned them off, that can be quite valuable too. You can get through to them. So there's that too. You can be known as being that guy. That works. But look, apart from that, you know, we are the underdog. We're going to have to learn how to undermine. And I think for the left, being feminine brained, if that's true, It comes more naturally to them than us, but we're going to have to learn that skill set. And hopefully, you know, another thing I will say too is one thing that's become very clear in all of this shenanigans is just how corrupt the right-wing establishment is. They can't wait to turn on their own. They've thrown everyone under the bus, and that's because they're living out their incentives. They're acting on their incentives too. It's better to be, I can only imagine, it's better to be in the system on the losing side than not in the system at all. You know what I mean? It's better to be a rich Republican who is part of the machine of government, even if the Republicans aren't actually winning, because you're still going to be on your cushy politician's salary. You know, that's always the problem with politicians, is that they have their own incentives, and their incentives are to stay elected and have power, unfortunately. So the GOP, all the Republicans, and even a lot of the alt-right grifters and libertarians, you know, they don't really want to see things go down because they've got a quite successful business talking about the way things are. And, you know, that's their incentive as well. But we just have to realize, well, they're going to act that way, but it's not useful for us. And so there's going to have to be a lot of change. And hopefully we'll get to that point. But I'm more than ever interested in, okay, in real terms, what can we do? What should we do? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts below as well, if you want to let me know. But they're my thoughts. We need to regain power because the formula seems to be pretty simple. Gain power, use it to enforce whatever it is that you value, your value set. And that's what the left did, and I think that's ultimately what we need to do as well.